my name is Veronica, and you're watching Dante's Boxing Nation. How did that one do?
That was very good. Do just maybe one or two more, okay? Now, before we get into the topic at hand, this video you guys are looking at right here that I'm showing you, I played this video on another Canelo Alvarez story where we were talking about the pay-per-view numbers, and I told you, as you guys could see, there's a lot of empty seats. We've heard the reports that the Canelo Alvarez fight only did 300,000 pay-per-view buys, and once again, you could clearly see that the arena was not sold out. It wasn't close to being sold out. So when I showed this video, a lot of fans were shocked that there were so many empty seats. But of course, there were some Canelo Alvarez fans saying, hey man, this is some BS. That footage was recorded like 3 hours before the main event. And I'm here to tell you that that's completely false. This video footage right here, it was recorded towards the end of the Montana Love fight. The Montana Love fight was the co-main event. If you've ever been to a fight of this magnitude, then you know the crowd is usually at its peak about 2 fights before the main. This footage was recorded by my man Milton, who was covering the fight for me, and he had told me that once Canelo Alvarez fought, he said there was a rush of people that came in, but it was only a sprinkle, and the empty seats still looked pretty much the same as they did an hour before the main event started. So with that being cleared up, let's go ahead and get into the actual video. Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So Canelo Alvarez's loss to Bivol has gotten 2 promoters fighting for Canelo's attention right now. Oscar De La Hoya, he just came out a couple days ago, and he said whoever decided to put Canelo in the ring with Bivol, that was the dumbest idea. He's obviously sending a dog whistle to Canelo Alvarez, telling Canelo Alvarez that Eddie Hearn doesn't have your best interest. I wouldn't have put you in with somebody like that. I would have gave you a much easier fight. In fact, that's pretty much what Oscar De La Hoya said. Oscar, he would continue by saying, you know, I wouldn't put him in there with Bivol for a rematch. I would bring him back down to 168 if he was working with me, and we would have him back to being the best. He would be back to winning. Now, just going back to, once again, Oscar De La Hoya saying it was the dumbest idea to put Canelo in there with Bivol. Now, guys, understand this. If Oscar De La Hoya would have came out and he would have said the same thing that I said before this fight, which is Canelo is going to lose this fight and he would lose to Andrade hands down. If Oscar De La Hoya would have said that before the fight, then you can take some credit for this being the dumbest idea if you were a promoter to put Canelo in there with someone who he's clearly going to lose to. That's not what Oscar De La Hoya said. That's not what he did. Oscar De La Hoya, in fact, he said that the Jamal Charlo fight is a much tougher fight than the Bivol fight. Oscar De La Hoya, he was looking at those lopsided odds just like everyone was. No one really gave Bivol a chance in this fight. And that's not everyone's fault because a lot of people didn't really know who Bivol was. I just happened to know who he was, and I was watching his fights almost every day leading up to this fight just to see if there was any way Canelo would have a chance. And every time I watch Bivol versus Smith, Bivol versus John Pascal, and then I will go back and watch Canelo versus Kovalev. Man, after I watched those fights so many times, I couldn't see a path to victory when it comes to Canelo Alvarez outside of a robbery, and he almost got it. So Oscar made it clear if he was promoting Canelo Alvarez, he would avoid a rematch with Bivol. Now, Oscar is not really using the size excuse like Eddie Hearn and Canelo are. He's just saying, don't fight Bivol for the obvious reason. But Eddie and Oscar, they definitely agree that Canelo Alvarez should stay away from the most difficult, toughest fights and he should take easier fights so he can continue to win. You know, maybe Eddie and Oscar, they realize that maybe they don't. But they just admitted that Canelo Alvarez, he has to be matched carefully in his career. Which means they're admitting that Canelo Alvarez was never the best fighter in the world. Because the best fighter in the world does not have to be matched carefully. When it comes to Terrence Crawford, you will never hear a promoter say, you know, we need to really be careful with who we put Crawford in the ring with. Crawford might not be ready for this guy, or Crawford might lose. You know, it would be really, really stupid. It would be a dumb idea to put Crawford in the ring with Errol Spence. It would be a really, really bad idea to allow Terrence Crawford to move up to a higher weight class and fight Jermell Charlo. You're never going to hear anything like that. You only hear it when it comes to Canelo Alvarez because they know that Canelo is a limited fighter. Eddie Hearn, he did 2 interviews back to back. I made a video on the first one, and now I want to talk about what he said since then. But before we talk about the new interview, let me go ahead and surmise the first one, just in case you missed it. Eddie Hearn, he said a lot of interesting things in that interview. He responded to Bivol wanting to possibly come down to 168 and fight for Canelo Alvarez's titles. And Eddie Hearn said Canelo wouldn't want to do that. And he started to say something and explain, but then he stopped. And he just said, we all know that Bivol deal. Basically what Eddie Hearn was saying is the same thing I had already told you guys. That if Bivol goes down to 168, takes all Canelo Alvarez's belts, that would be the most embarrassing defeat for Canelo Alvarez, and it would be very difficult for him to come back from that. At least if he loses a second time, it's still a major setback at 175. But he can go down to 168 and he will still have belts, right? But Canelo is screwed either way, because now if he does go back to 168, Benavidez is his mandatory. David Morrell is his mandatory. And PBC is still pushing hard for Canelo Alvarez to take the most money he's ever made and fight Jermell Charlo. Canelo Alvarez, he turned down far more money to fight Jermell Charlo. He would have made a lot more money fighting Jermell Charlo than he did fighting Bivol. So this shows you the type of respect he has for Jermell Charlo. Now, no reason to play the clip because I already played it in my last video when I was talking about what Eddie said. But you guys can go back and watch that video. It's only a couple videos ago. But Eddie Hearn, he revealed that he went out, he played golf with Canelo Alvarez. He said that Canelo was devastated. He said that Canelo, you know, he was upset about the loss, but he did tell Eddie Hearn he wants the rematch because Eddie asked him, what do you want to do? What do you want to do next? And Canelo says, I want the rematch. I know I can beat him. Eddie Hearn says, yeah, but you got to be right, because losing 2 losses back to back is not a good look for Canelo Alvarez. And that's what Canelo said. Well, you know, I believe I could beat him. He said, but we're going to think about it. I'm going to go and talk to Eddie Reynoso and we'll think about it. And see, this is something that doesn't make sense to me. If Canelo Alvarez has it made up in his mind, why would he need to go talk to Eddie Reynoso about him wanting to take the rematch? You don't go back and talk to Eddie Reynoso when it comes to a situation like this. This is up to you, right? If you truly believe you can beat him, you don't have to consult with anyone. You don't have to see what your trainer thinks unless you're asking him, do you think we got a chance? This is your career. This is your legacy, not your trainer's legacy. I mean, Sugar Ray Leonard, he didn't ask Angelo Dundee, his trainer at the time. He didn't ask him, do you think we should take the rematch with Roberto Duran? No, Sugar Ray Leonard already had his mind made up. That's what he wanted to do. Sugar Ray Leonard, he already knew that he could beat Duran in a rematch, and he did. This is obviously not a comparison to Sugar Ray Leonard, but it is a comparison to what fighters who have confidence in their ability do. So going back to Eddie Hearn in the recent interview that he did, I've already told you guys, he just told Canelo Alvarez, you got to be sure if you're going to take the rematch. You got to make sure you win, right? And clearly, Eddie Hearn doesn't feel that he can win, because in this new interview, he just said, and I'm going to go ahead and quote what he said. Eddie said, if I was advising him, or if he would actually listen to what I thought, he would ask my opinion. As I have said, we don't make the decision. I would probably go Triple G. We would probably give Dimitri Bivol a big fight in September, October, whether it's Buatsi Richards winner, whether it's Caleb Smith, whether that's Ramirez. End quote. See, guys, I talked about this before in the previous Canelo video, and I'll talk about it again. When pride is involved, I'm talking about Canelo Alvarez. Canelo already understands. Eddie Hearn, he's going to look out for my best interest. Eddie Hearn is going to try to protect me. Eddie Hearn is going to try to keep me winning so we can keep making money together. But at the same time, Eddie is telling me, and he's telling the boxing world, that I'm not good enough to beat Bivol. Now, sure, Eddie, he's going to make excuses and tell the world Canelo lost because of size and all of these things. That's what Eddie is supposed to do. He promotes me. But that doesn't make this loss feel better when it comes to the Bivol fight. You know, guys, this is no different than a little kid fighting in a national tournament. Maybe he's a boxer, or maybe he's just, on a baseball, basketball team. There's nothing you want more than to win first place, right? And when you don't win first place and you lose, no matter what your friends tell you, no matter what the trainer tells you, if he tries to say something bad about the other team or the other guy that just beat you in a boxing tournament, no matter what they say to try to make you feel better, give you excuses, say you were robbed in the fight. One of the judges in your fight was the kid's uncle. You will say all of these things to try to make this kid feel better for the loss. But at the end of the day, that kid is still going to feel devastated. He's still going to be crushed because there was nothing he wanted more than that first place trophy. This may or may not be the way Canelo Alvarez is feeling right now, but there's a good chance he is feeling that way. Either Canelo Alvarez has accepted that Bivol is better than he is and he is going to move on to take on easier fights, or the more people like Eddie Hearn come out and say, I want to see Canelo take an easier fight, the more that might make Canelo want to take the rematch, even if Canelo Alvarez doesn't know for sure if he could win, just because his pride may get the best of him. Once again, hearing your promoter and everyone else, Oscar De La Hoya, imply, I can't beat this guy, Bivol. That's what they're saying. Sure, they got my best interest. Sure, they're trying to protect me. But they're really telling people, I'm not good enough to beat this guy. And the one ironic thing about Oscar De La Hoya and him saying it was so dumb for Canelo Alvarez to take that fight and he should avoid the rematch, that actually is what Oscar De La Hoya did in his prime. When Oscar De La Hoya, he lost to Shane Mosley. He never took the rematch. When Oscar De La Hoya lost to Tito Trinidad, he never took the rematch. So Canelo Alvarez may end up doing the same thing. When Julio Cesar Chavez lost to Pernell Whitaker, he never took the rematch. The fight ended in a majority draw, which means only one out of the three judges had Pernell Whitaker winning the fight. The other two judges, they had the fight a draw. That was one of the biggest robberies of all time. And it was Chavez that walked away from the rematch. So what route does Canelo Alvarez take? There's a lot for him to think about, but that's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one. There's a new feature on YouTube. It's called Super Thanks. Those of you guys who really like what we're doing over here when it comes to new media, Dante's Boxing Nation, and you really enjoy the whole truth, you can go ahead and show that extra love by sending the Super Thanks.
How has this changed your life, man?
It's going good. It's going good. I feel younger. I look younger. Picking up the younger girls. I just can't scratch that. But It's been good. It's been good. I like the look. I like the feel. I feel more confident now, you know, and it was money well spent, should I say.
Cool. Now, in terms of the response, what has been people said, like, as people being like, hey, you know, what do you have on your head, or things of that sort?
The most response I get is like, yo, what barber you go to? They get, you know, such a close shave with, you know, everything lined up so sharp and everything. And, you know, then I go into explaining to them the procedure of what I had done and everything. And they all was like, I would never done if you didn't point.
Fellas, I've got some great news for you. If you've lost your hair or have a receding hairline, the time has come when you can finally get your hairline back through a process called scalp micropigmentation. So here's how it works. It's a hair tattoo that replicates the look of your hair follicles when you have fully shaved it down. So to get this hookup, make sure you follow and contact my man Scalp Carolinas on Instagram. All right, now check this out, guys. If you're looking to repair eczema scars, burns and bruises, dark spots and blemishes, then this right here is the perfect product for you guys. It's called Elo Deki Face and Body Oil. Athletes and top-ranking boxers, they're also using it after training to reduce swelling, inflammation, and to ease the pain. So get yours today. Go to elodeki.com, like them on Facebook, and follow them on Instagram.